Hi there everyone, this is Jo from Primary to Secondary, and I'm delighted to be joined once again by Azeem Amir. This time he's going to talk to us about his moving to secondary school experience. So hi Azeem, I introduced you in the last interview, but would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and tell people who don't know who you are?
Oh yeah, thank you very much, Joe. Yeah, once again, thanks for having me on, and I really enjoyed the first interview. So hopefully, this will be just as good. My name is Azeem Amir, and I am a member of the England and Great Britain blind football team. I'm a TEDx speaker, and I am hopefully going to give you a few insights about what my transition was like between primary to secondary, and a bit more focused this time on the secondary school.
Wonderful, that's great. Shall we start with how your secondary school helped to support you with the move, actually before you moved? Is there anything that they did that helped you?
So in general terms, they had the open days, they had the transition day where kind of you do a generic day of school to get a feel of what it's like in terms of you turn up at the start time, and then you do a full school day, which I can still remember being a bit of a bit crazy due to the fact that there's so many different people from so many different schools coming to the high school that you're going to be attending. And yeah, I mean, it was a good way to I guess give you a bit of a picture of what will be like once you turn up to year 7. With regards to transitional visits, for me, it was great that the local council were able to support me in terms of allowing me to memorize the route by the repetition. So walking it from my house to school, getting on the bus, how that process would be like. So I was very fortunate to have great mobility trainers and the support people in place to allow me to do that. And then the school itself had a very good SEN team, and they were great in terms of supporting me in lessons to give me a bit of an idea of what was to come in September.
That sounds fantastic. It sounds like you got quite a lot of support actually. So how are you feeling in the run up to starting in September?
And I mean, it feels like there's a massive gap between the end of year 6 to the start of year 7 with that summer holiday, because it's a very you're in kind of this excitement / nerves phase where you're excited because it's a fresh start, but you're nervous as to the uncertainty of what it's going to bring. So yeah, it was a very mixed bag of feelings throughout that summer in terms of getting a brand new uniform, a school bag, your generic shopping that you do for school. But once the day came, and I think the biggest hit was, I could still remember, where it's the difference between your first day and then your actual first day. So the first day you turn up, it's just the year 7, so you're thinking, oh, this ain't too bad, plenty of space. And then the next day, the whole other 4 year groups turn up, and it's it's a bit of a shock to the system.
Very different, yeah. So how was the first, talk us through maybe the first week. How did it go for you?
Well, I guess it was a lot of uncertainty as to even in my primary school, we didn't even have a bell ring. So when the bell used to ring at high school, to signal the change between lessons, that even that was something to get used to, the fact that, right, you've got to pick up your stuff now. You've got to this class has ended, and now you've got to pick up your stuff. You've got to walk to the next classroom, sit yourself down, and then start the next lesson. And even little things like you're carrying your own bag around, like even that's something that primary school we used to just having a little folder that you put to a side. But this time, you've got your own responsibility of a bag, your lunch, all that is kind of, that independence level is really a big step up. But I think through the notion that everybody else is in the same boat as you, and they're also kind of you kind of follow the crowd, as in a sense, to see what's everybody doing, and you follow them as to kind of pick out to get a bit of an idea of where you're going, and even little things like the timetables, having to colour in your timetable to help you to understand it better as to what room is what and what subjects what. But yeah, it's a bit of a crazy week, first week, but it's once I think it's quite a quick transition once you've actually settled in as to getting used to the repetition of the same classrooms and the teachers and building up your friendship groups.
Can I ask a little bit about the support that you got? So maybe support from family that you had, support from your peers. Were you there with friends, and did they help you out?
So when we went up to high school, I was lucky that I had a few peers who came up from my primary school with me. So actually, when you'd recognise someone who you knew, it was that sense of actually, it's not a brand new full environment. There's still a few people that there's still a few people who you've grown up with, who can who that they know that you've been through the same journey as them, and it's a nice feeling to have that bit of I guess a bit more security there as to actually in a brand new school you still got a few people that you've grew up with. And then in terms of the teachers, they're great with regards to you have your form tutor, and that person is kind of the person you look to when you need a bit of guidance. And I was lucky, I had a great form tutor who, whenever I was a bit unsure, because you see them first thing every morning, you can ask a question, and for them, I think they see through every year the new phase of year sevens, that for them no questions are silly questions, or they little things like, where do I go for my lunch, how do I put my money on. It's it's really nice to have that support from them.
So that was really reassuring for you, wasn't it? That you had, a really good form teacher. You knew that you could ask anything that you wanted. And also, a really big factor, I think, for a lot of children is having those peers, those friends that, have come up from a different school. That can make a really big difference, can't it?
Yeah.
Can you, thinking back, Amir, can you think of a few things that actually went really well for you, some things that really worked and really helped you settle in?
I think for me it was the fact that I already had a rough idea of the building, and if you've been on the transition visits and the open days, and you get a bit of an idea of where you're going to be going next, because sometimes you're changing classrooms 6 times in a day and transferring from the top of the building all the way across. It's a bit of a hectic time, especially with how much traffic with people coming through. But it was great to actually have a bit of an idea that this floor, these are the subjects on this floor, and actually that fear that you might walk into a wrong classroom, or you might be late to a class because you don't know where it's going to be, and it will happen. Like I still remember just getting lost a few times, and you're thinking to yourself, what's going to happen when I turn up to the class late? But I guess that understanding is there. I mean, my sister talks about the time where she turned up to a class, she was in it for 40 minutes, and then she realised she was in the wrong class, and she had to get up and move to the right one. But it's bound to happen. So it's just getting used to it. It is definitely part of the journey and learning experience.
Well, yeah, that's really good advice, actually. Just to realise that teachers aren't going to shout at you, and everyone's in the same position. I think that's really great advice. So, was there anything, looking back, that didn't go so well for you, that might have had an effect, a negative effect, I suppose, on you settling in, and how you felt about that?
I think the one thing that I remember really struggling with was the adjusting to the online systems. So the fact that the email system, the fact that work would get sent via announcements, and now people have moved to Google Classroom and Microsoft OneDrive, and it's all in a cloud. And for me back then, it was just a VLE system, and even that was quite complicated because you go out of primary school, and I don't even remember having many IT lessons in primary school. So when you have that jump up to secondary school, then all of a sudden you're memorizing passwords to get into emails, to get into online VLE systems to access homework, and now I see they've got mind maps and things like that. It's getting used to that transition, and one night you come home and you can't remember your password and you can't do your homework for the next day. It's that panic of actually getting, just because you're not that clued up on the IT systems, and through lack of experience, it's quite a bit daunting as to I'm not going to be able to do my homework tonight because I'm unsure as to how to log in. And yeah, I think that's a phase that I think the schools should realise, that it's the children coming through have actually had such a minimal experience of working on computers. So, and all of a sudden you go to high school and there's everything's online.
So that's a really big adjustment, isn't it? Yeah, huge adjustment, and especially for you. I remember you saying in the last interview that you were really lucky because you had the same, did you call them the learning support assistant, or?
That's it.
Yeah, so you had the same actually follow you from primary to secondary, which must have been amazing. It must have been, really supportive. But I also remember you saying something about it was difficult for you in the lessons because they hadn't given enough prepared work, I suppose, to your LSA so that she could, prepare it for you.
Yeah, I mean, that was an additional challenge, and a lot of it came down to the fact that they would the teachers had never had a visually impaired student under their arms as to how to prepare work for them, the time taken, and it was definitely a big struggle due to the fact that the work would be handed out to the rest of the class, and then it was like, "Oh, Azeem, sorry, we didn't realise we had to send these sheets in before to your LSA to prepare them in a format that you were able to access them on your computer, or in a way that it would be able to get kind of read out to you." And it was the fact that I was actually waiting for my work whilst work had been handed out, and it's so easy to fall behind in that instance, and that in that moment you do feel that you are different from the rest of the class. Whereas if that work is handed out at the same time, it's very easy to then look at the person next to you. They're doing the same work, they're on the same question, but if it takes half an hour from when the work's handed out for you to get yours in an accessible format, you're already a few pages behind, and the rest of the class moves past you, and it's that feeling of that catching up feeling and trying to claw time back. I think it's very unfair and unjust. So yeah, I think it's very important that teachers are aware of the individual students' needs and try to accommodate them to the best they can. But I say this, but I've had some teachers and lecturers in my life where they've been so great as to they're sending out the term's work at the start of the term, and it's a shock and amazement as to, if you can do it, why can't everybody else?
Yeah, that's incredible. So a real challenge for you, and it does have an effect, I suppose, on how you interact with your peers in the class as well. If you're, not kind of literally on the same page as they are, I can see that would be a real challenge. But how great that you have had some teachers who have really tuned into that, have really understood it, and that must have helped you enormously.
Yeah, definitely, and I think it is through them specific people where they give you the confidence that actually, if you can speak up and you can have that conversation, which it can be a bit of a difficult conversation, where people to say to the teacher, actually, this isn't good enough, and you need your work to be given 2 days in advance so that you can have it at the same time And a lot of people, it's that confidence of actually being able to speak up that they struggle with. But if we can, I guess, install this mentality that getting your work at the same time as everybody else isn't something that's spectacular. It's a generic requirement, and I think that will really then allow for standards to be set where a lot of teachers can follow them.
Yeah, I really get that. I think, having been a teacher myself, I know that there are a lot of students that I've worked with that wouldn't have been able to cope with that maybe emotionally. It might have meant, that they got very angry or frustrated. Um, so for a lot of students, that would be a real challenge, to feel that you're being different, to feel that people aren't there for you, I suppose, and aren't adapting to your needs. How did you find the move emotionally?
It's a bit like people use a topsy turvy. Like it is very one day you kind of settle in and you're having a great day, but the next day it's you feel like it's a very draining, and the energy levels, because people don't kind of realize that the transition is, it has an impact on so many different levels. The fact that you're independent as to what little things, like what you're going to pick for your lunch and where you're going to go at break time. You haven't got a segregated area for your class like you would usually at primary school. You've got the full school grounds as to where you want to go and the activity you choose to do or the club you choose to do, and it's that choice. And a little thing that walking, and I still remember being such a big um, kind of transition where you're actually, now you're walking from one class to the next. But here at high school, it's a good 5 minute walk to your next room. So it is very draining upon your energy, and the workload is quite a big shock as well. Shock to the system that you've got all these different subjects now, and work's required for the next day or 2 days. You've got deadlines, and but it is part of growing up. And before you know it, you look back on that and think, oh, that was easy, and now look where you are. It's you go back to them times and you think they were great times actually.
I think, obviously you're very, very resilient, and that's great. And, the support that you've had must have really helped with that. How did you get on with technology? Did you have everything that you needed? Is it the brailler and, and all of those that were really necessary for you?
I think for me, the fact that I had my LSA there who had been there in primary school, and she knew how my ways of working were the ways that I like to access certain work online or read out to me, or it was great that she already had a first-hand account of what works good for Azeem. But for people, I know that it's a bit different now who step up. I think being able to get the understanding with the person you're working with, the TA, that I find it easier for me to work in this way, or if you can sit and read me out these questions, it helps me to do my work faster rather than fidget about on the laptop, setting it all up, connecting to the Wi-Fi, pulling the work up. I personally found out actually the time taken to set up a laptop to access a sheet of work that can be read out to you straight away I just think it's so much easier, and it's developing that convenience. The you don't have to make things difficult just because the options there to have spectacular technology there. Sometimes the easiest thing is someone, your partner or a TA, to read the work out to you, and you can just get on with it that way. And it saves time. It saves that mental energy instead of having the energy of taking the time to set the laptop up and connect it all up. You can spend that energy towards the actual work, which can only be a benefit.
Yeah, I really get that. And I suppose, you saying you were very, very lucky to have that LSA, who was there for you from primary. But I don't think that's going to happen a lot now. Do you think it would be beneficial for, for students who are sight impaired maybe to be able to meet the LSAs before they start school and to talk about, their needs and how they like to do things?
I think for the LSA to develop a good relationship with your current teaching staff at your primary school is key. If they can come in and watch how you work and have a few sit downs with the teachers and the TAs at your primary school, they're not going in necessarily completely in the unknown as to what works best for you when you get there.
Yeah, really good advice, really good advice. So, thinking back, is there anything that you think your secondary school could have done better to improve the experience of transition?
I do think the getting the whole classes clued up on the IT systems is a key, especially in the day and age we live in now, as to kind of some set, how to log in, how to set this up, how to get this work up. I think it's really, really important that the students are well aware of how the systems work. But I think also getting some sort of understanding where your teachers kind of have a rough idea of on a one-to-one system as to who you are and your personality, so they can find out your strengths and be able to deliver in a way that really works for you. Because you've got to remember, in a class of 28, one teaching style or one way of teaching isn't going to fit everyone. Being able to adapt it to the best you can. You can't say, right, I'm going to do 28 different ways of teaching or presenting, but you can't do that. It's just impossible. But doing it in a way where you can maybe do 2 or 3 different formats, so that you're able to help and tick what works best for a lot of the students. And I think that'll really help, and hopefully it will allow for a bit more of a smoother transition.
Yeah, great advice. I know that you are extremely sporty. Have you always been interested in sport, Azeem? And how did the secondary school support you with that?
Yeah, I mean, the school were great in terms of, the biggest shock is the facilities. Like, they've got an AstroTurf pitch, they've got a field, they've got an indoor sports hall. In my primary school, we'd sit and have lunch. We'd have a assembly and PE lessons in one space. So it was that was the biggest shock as to the facilities. And then the PE lessons are great, but and for me, PE lessons were great, but it's very difficult with the when the school has kind of a relatively small department and the class sizes are so huge. I think that's a very common thing where the year group is split up into a 4 or a 6, and that's there. You've got 2 or 3 classes actually having PE at the same time, and it's quite a big group for the teachers to handle, and especially when you're out and on a cold, wet winter's day, it is a really big challenge. And it goes back to that point where before you were based in a little hall at primary school, but now you're outside and it's raining and you think, can we go in now? And the teachers are like, nope, we're having to stick it out. But yeah, it was great, the opportunities to do things like climbing, and that's something that you would never get at primary school. So it's great to have all these brand new sports introduced to you, and the expertise of the teachers.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like it was a wonderful experience for you. You went on to do extremely well in your A levels, and of course your sporting abilities. You're now a coach, a mentor, a speaker. You have an amazing personality, and just so much courage and wisdom. I think whenever I'm talking to you, I just think, oh, you're so wise. You really are so wise. Most of that, of course, is down to you. But I was wondering about, are there any individuals that have really helped you since you started secondary school on that journey to where you are now, to being where you are now, to being that amazing young man?
I mean, I think everybody has certain individuals that throughout growing up have a big impact, and the teachers have this amazing power to be that individual. Like, I still remember there was certain PE teachers, because of my love for sport, who saw me grow up through high school. Because, in a sense, you go in as like a new person to high school, and you come out as a mature individual, and it's such a big phase of your life, that them few years. It's 5 years, but it's like 10 years packed into five, really. And having a teacher there who's able to recognize you as an individual, and be able to see you in that process of growing up, and where you might need a bit of emotional support, or a bit of more of a friend than teacher, where they're able to acknowledge that times might be a bit harder, or not only through the bad times but also the good times when things are going really well and you're achieving your goals within the academia and outside of it. I think that has such a big power. And I think teachers sometimes don't realize that how much students look up to them, because they are, in a lot of people's lives, that role model, and that in a lot of young lads' lives, that male role model. The teacher has that much of an impact upon them. And sometimes even little things, when you might get shouted at by a teacher, or they might tell you off, and how big of an impact that actually has. Because it's like you look up to that person, and if they're telling you off, they're clearly not happy with you.
Mm. Yeah, so yeah, to be really mindful of that, the impact that teachers can have. I know
Yeah.
you had a great relationship, didn't you, with one of your teachers who went on to do Tough Mudder with you?
Yeah, 100%. That was one of my PE teachers, and he taught me from year 7 to 11, and actually I still regularly speak to him now, and I've done some work with him at the new organisation he works for. And it was just a surreal experience. The fact that I remember sitting down at a parents' evening once with two of my PE teachers, myself and my dad, and now I'm actually working with them, and it's crazy to think, how strong that bond actually was, and where it led to. And he's watched me transition us from school to A levels, and then A levels to university, and also progress with my football. And it's great to have that person there who can actually say, I was there when it all started, when really you were complaining about being stood outside in the wet and cold, and now where you've got to now playing around the world. It's a great feeling.
That's wonderful to hear. Um, yeah, he must be a really special person. So thank you so much for this, Azeem. This has been wonderful. I really hope that teachers can, get some inspiration from this, and get some tips. We are going to be working together, aren't we, to put a checklist together for schools, so that, from gaining from your experience and your knowledge. So we'll have a checklist that's available for free on the website, and I think that would be really, really useful. Like you say, for teachers who might not have worked with sight impaired students before, it could be really, really useful for them.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think so. Great. I'm really excited about that. So thank you so much for today. I know that last time you said it was okay for people to get in touch with you if they wanted more information. Are you still okay with that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if you can put my details out at the end of the podcasts, or in whichever way that people are listening to this or watching it, if you can somehow find a way to contact me, I'm more than happy to help in whichever capacity that I can.
That's wonderful. Thanks so much. So it just remains for me to say a huge thank you again, and to wish you well in your studies. University beckons, doesn't it? So yeah, good luck with everything you're doing, and with your football as well. And thanks so much.
Oh no, thank you, Joe.